الحمد لله وكفى والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والله جعل لكم من بيوتكم سكنا سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. So last week we touched upon relationships and why we need them and how our lives are so intertwined with so many different relationships, whether it's our parents, whether it's our spouses, our siblings, employers, employees. And the core ingredient of any relationship we talked about is to have good character, good akhlaq. We talked about how the Prophet ﷺ was the best of this. And we talked a little bit about last week how we want to make these sessions a little bit more than just listening entertainment. And the only way we're going to work and improve on this is if we take it sort of seriously and think about our own character and improve it. And our first assignment was the small black book. Do you have a small black book? No? Are you too young for that, huh? So we had made a small assignment that you should have a small little book or some sort of place where you can start thinking about your own characteristics and traits, whether they're good or bad, and at least start listing them, because it's very important to, the first step they say to the path to recovery is to understand that there's a problem, right? And I'm not saying we all have problems. It's just by human nature, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us very differently. Some people are more angry than others, but you can channel that anger for the deen. Like Umar is a perfect example. Before Islam, he was a very, very, he's a very angry person, very strong-headed person. And he used that in destructive purposes. When he became Muslim, became a Khalifa, he was very, he used that anger only when it displeased Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we all have characteristics and traits that we can improve on, and the only way to do that is actually to list them down and write it down so we know exactly what we're dealing with. And this is important also because if we're in a conversation or we get into some sort of argument with someone and someone says, oh, you're so arrogant or you're so egotistical, think about that and write that down. I know we may not accept it yet, but inshallah, with time we'll sort of understand why they said the way they did. And the reason why this helps us, not just for this series, but in general, is because we start appreciating our shortcomings and inshallah work on them, which again is our ultimate goal. I mean, we can keep patting ourselves on the back and act like we're perfect, only to find out on the day of judgment that we had these characteristics that we never thought about, never worked on them, and we have to present all this to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? The second thing is that we start appreciating how these may be affecting our marriage. And for the people that are not here, that are not married or listening, it's something to think about, because I was just telling my wife that, we got married when we were 21 years old. And if you think like nowadays, that's like a little kid, and there was no instruction manual. We never got any sort of lectures, because at that time, these YouTube videos were not as popular, or you couldn't go online and find whatever you wanted to look for. So it was a big risk that we took, that our parents took actually, to let us get married at that age. And we didn't have all this advices and all these different books that are out there that can kind of help guide and lay down the framework of what a marriage should look like. So for even people that are not married, these talks should help, because for people that are married, inshallah, they can work on their marriage. For people that are not married yet, they can think about how they would approach these situations, because it's life, you're going to approach these situations. The third thing is that even if they're not affecting our marriage, these characteristics or traits, then it's something we should still work on. I mean, if you have anger and you don't really get angry with your wife, but you have that maybe at workplace or somewhere else, that's something we still need to work on. It may not be causing problems in our marriage, but in general, it's not a good trait to have. And ultimately, one of the main goals by trying to work on our character is to follow the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, where he came with perfect character, and he came to teach us perfect character. And so we should also strive towards that. Now, we may not be able to fix all of them at once, but that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us 60, 70, 80 years so that we can slowly work towards fixing them. And the hope and the goal is that by the time we pass away, that we fix some of them, if not all of them, or at least on the day of judgment, we can stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and say, oh Allah, I tried. At least I tried. We can say that much. So today, we'll start discussing one of the most important, if not the most important relationship in a small home, or just in general, is that of a husband and a wife. Right? And that's the central aspect of a home, and more so a quote-unquote smart home. Because if that relationship isn't working or not optimally working, it can affect all the other relationships around it. Right? Like we talked about, it's like a spider web. The middle is a husband and wife. And from there you have offshoots of, the children, the parents, the in-laws, the friends, whoever you want to add in there, but the central and the core is the husband and wife. And that relationship is so important to the house itself. And I'll highlight in the Quran the ayahs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about how both of these aspects are linked: a home and a husband and wife and a marriage. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in His infinite mercy, created Adam alayhi salam as the first human being, right, without a mother or father. And from his rib, He created Hawa alayhi salam. Right? He could have easily made her as a separate entity, fashioner, designer, made her that way. But He made her from his rib. And there's a lot of hikmah behind that. When Adam alayhi salam became conscious, he found Hawa alayhi salam laying next to him, and immediately found an attraction, inclination towards her. And the scholars say that if Hawa alayhi salam was not created from Adam alayhi salam, this natural attraction that they had, this love and the compassion, would not have been present. Right? So that was one of the hikmahs of creating Hawa alayhi salam from Adam alayhi salam. And in fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُم مَّوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. And one of the signs is that He created for you spouses from among yourselves, so that you may find comfort, لِتَسْكُنُوا, right? To find comfort in them. And He has placed between you compassion and mercy. Surely in it are signs for people who reflect. So if you look at this ayah, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about spouses? And what are they supposed to bring? Right? The same word, litaskunu, peace, tranquility, calmness, and comfort. And this is what we sort of started off the whole discussion a few weeks ago by what? Wallahu ja'ala lakum min buyutikum sakana. Again, same, seconds, sukoon, peace, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created from our homes a place of sakana. Right? And the same, spouses are supposed to create the same peace and tranquility. And now you can start to, begin to see how both of these concepts are very closely related, right? A home and a marriage. And if there's dysfunction in a marriage, it's very, very hard to have a home where we have peace, right? If the husband and wife have dysfunction there and they can't get along and there's always friction there, then as you start adding different pieces, it's a home, but it's not very well functioning. Kids don't want to be there because the parents are always fighting. Nobody wants to come to their house. Friends say, you know what, we'll go to my house instead of your parents' house. Relatives don't want to come, right? It becomes very, very difficult. And a home is supposed to be a place where we escape from the chaos. But if there's chaos going on in our own home because our marriages are not proper, then what's the point? It's very difficult. And to highlight how important this relationship of a husband and wife is, and a spouse is, and why it's so important to have a good marriage and a spouse. When we get to Jannah, who are we going to go to Jannah with? Who are we going to be in Jannah with? Our parents? No. Our children? Yeah, inshallah they'll be there, but our children? No. We will be in Jannah with our spouses. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in many, many different places, references this all over the Quran. Udkhulul jannata antum wa azwajukum tuhbarun. Right? Enter paradise, you and your spouses, showered with bliss. So who are you entering Jannah with? Didn't say your parents, didn't say your children, your spouses, your wife, your husband. Hum wa azwajuhum fi dhilalin ala al-ara'iki muttaki'un. They and their spouses are in pleasant shades, reclining on couches. Right? And these are just some of the few ayahs that I'm referencing, but there's so many more different areas in the Quran that talk about this husband and wife and how they'll be in Jannah, and so many different hadiths as well. So that's why this relationship is very, very important for us, and we tend to take it very, very lightly. And the advice to the people that are not married is that, when you think of this, when you think of getting married, think about who you're marrying, right? The brothers and the sisters. You're looking for a spouse that's going to be with you in Jannah, right? So you want to look for the best characteristics that you can. Right? And you want to look for a person that is going to be your partner both in this life and inshallah in the hereafter as well. So it's not just about the marriage itself, but even selecting a spouse. When I was in Iowa for medical school, there was an elder person in the community, and he would say that, we spend more time when we're trying to buy a car than we do finding a spouse and getting married. Right? When we're looking for a car, what are the things that we do? We read the description of the car, what features it has compared to other cars. We look at the reviews online. We talk to people that drive these cars. Look at the safety ratings to see what happens if it were in a crash. Right? You can put all that into a marriage as well. That we don't think of this when we try to get married. We just say, I like someone. I like the way they look. The car looks nice. I'm going to tie the knot, and we'll figure all that out later. Love will solve all problems. Right? That's how we approach it, and that becomes very difficult. So And unfortunately, with a car, let's say you get a car, you get a car you don't like, or you get old of it, you can trade it in or you sell it, right? It's easy. Or if a car crashes, you junk it. But with a spouse, it's not that easy. I mean, you can still do that, but that's not, that's not what our purpose is. These relationships, once you start these relationships, it's almost, when you go through it, let's say you have a bad relationship, once you get done with it, or you quote unquote trade it in or sell it, that the stress you go through, you think, do I really want to get married again? That's not what marriage was designed for. It's supposed to be, a place where you find peace and tranquility, and that's not there for whatever reason. We have to first figure out what the issue is and work on that. And for most of us, that ship has sailed. Trading the car and it doesn't work anymore, right? We're stuck with our husband and our wife, and now we have to make it work. So although we can't go back and change that initial decision, because most of us that are here listening already are already deep into our marriages, right? We have to work what we already have, and it's not hard to fix it up. It just takes some extra effort, you can say, right? And this effort, even if you were before you got married, you still have to work on these issues anyway. Now it just makes it that much harder because now people are involved in that marriage, in that life, in your home, they have to fix for their sake as well. So for those that are already married, we have to understand how sacred of a relationship this is, right? What we got ourselves into, as they say. This was a relationship that was founded in Jannah with Adam al-Islam and Hawa al-Islam. And after we pass away, like I like to talk about, we will be reunited with our spouses in Jannah. I know there are many people that will say, what if I don't want to be with my wife in Jannah? She caused me enough trouble in this life. When I get there, I don't want to be with her. Or, I put up with this guy my whole life. You're telling me when I die, I'm going to see him again in Jannah? Right? So what happens with that? Inshallah, we'll talk about that later too. That's a whole separate topic that, one of the scholars actually addressed it very nicely. So inshallah, we'll talk about that when it comes to that point. So back to what this relationship and what it's supposed to bring. That's what today's topic is going to be about. Why marry? Why marry someone? What is that marriage supposed to bring? Right? And the title that they gave for this session was marital harmony. So I don't want people to think that you're going to come in for 20 minutes and find out how to have harmony in your marriage and walk away apply that formula and be. It's a long process, but we'll start touching upon that. Right? So the ayah that we mentioned above or before, one of the main functions of marriage is for us to find peace and tranquility in our spouses. Right? That's marital harmony. Right? We talked previously about how a home, when you return to, is a place that's supposed to provide that, right? And the only way that works is that if you have a family that works like that, there's peace and harmony, right? And if there's no peace and harmony, if people don't have that when they get home, for whatever the situation is, whether it's a relationship with their wife, a relationship with their children, relationship with their husband, and it's not comforting, this is one of the reasons why people, whether it's a husband or wife, they look outside the home for this peace and tranquility, or look into someone else. Maybe at work, maybe they met someone there that they're nicer, right? Maybe, this lady brings me a cup of coffee every day when I go to work, right? Or this guy tells me how great my clothes look when I show up to work, right? This is how shaitan tries to play and mess up these marriages, because shaitan also understands how sacred, of a relationship this is, and his job is to destroy, cause chaos everywhere. So he'll put more of these thoughts. So if we don't fix our marriage, all these thoughts start creeping up, and that's how you get this chaos and destruction in a marriage, right? And when we get home, nobody greets us at the front door. I have to go and make my own cup of chai, or we don't comment on how nice our wife looks. All these things, shaitan will kind of spin them and then have us ruminating on those thoughts over and over again. Say, what? At work, when I go there, she gives me my cup of coffee. She knows how much sugar I like in my coffee, how much creamer I like. I don't get that at home. I have to do it myself. Although I'm not saying that this is what a home should be when you walk in. Whatever your situation is, whatever your preference or how your family works, these thoughts, shaitan starts, making you ruminate on them and cause problems, right? Or you walk into the house yelling about something. That's not peace or tranquility. That's just World War III when you walk in the home. The home that we spend so much of our time and energy trying to acquire and have, and you walk in and nobody wants to be there. That's not what a home is supposed to be for. So, and in order to find out how we should be living, how we should find this marital harmony, we talked about you need a role model. Just like anything you want to achieve, there's always a role model. And this role model is obviously none other than the Prophet ﷺ and his wives, Ummahatul Mu'mineen. Right? And he was the most perfect human being, and his marriages, there's so many lessons. It's so amazing that the Prophet ﷺ's life is so exposed, right? Every aspect of his life we know about from the seerah. Nothing stayed hidden. How many of us can say that, hey, you know what? Come look at my life. Put a camera on me everywhere I go. How I am at work, how I'm at the masjid, how I'm at home with my kids, how I am alone in the bedroom by myself. How many of us can say that? No, we have this concept. No, ghar ki baat. Whatever happens at home stays at home, right? It doesn't come out. Why? Because we tend to act differently. We don't, that character is missing in us, where when we're outside, we want to show people how we are, how righteous, how humble, how good we are. But then at home is World War III when we go in, because we're yelling and screaming. And this is very common. I mean, it's sad to say that, this is not just in books, and this actually happens every single day, right? A lot of people are like that. They have this image where they want to present to people outside the home, but when they get home, they're nothing like that. And that's what part of the problem is. That's why I talked about, if we're really serious about our character, right? If we really want to get better, we have to sit down and write those things about our character and work on it, right? It can't be a lecture where someone tells you, hey, let me diagnose you, right? Even that, when we want to go diagnose, we hide things. When you go to a doctor, if you hide your symptoms, they can't treat you properly. Right? They can't get it. I've talked to any physician. If you tell them one thing and you miss out one important part, they can give you a medicine that can kill you. Right? So in the same exact way, we have to try to think how we're going to make this better. And the only way to do it is by, being honest with ourselves. And the Prophet, we examine his life. Why? Because he said, in a hadith said, khayrukum li ahlihi wa ana khayrukum li ahli. Right? The best of you is the best to his wives. And I'm the best of you. And I'm the best to my wives. Right? Basically highlighting that the best of the people are the ones that are really good to their wives, right? And he's saying that I have that quality because I'm the best of character. And we can examine the perfect marriages that existed with him and Ummahat al-Mu'mineen to see what lessons we can learn and how to attain that marital harmony that they had. And again, marital harmony doesn't mean that we're never going to have an argument. We're never going to, have a disagreement. It's just how to handle like civilized people, not like animals. When animals get into a fight, what happens? They go at it, they headbutt, fight each other, and then it's done. They simmer down. We're not like that, right? We have to find this with every human being. There's going to be a difference of opinion. Even as physicians, when you're collaborating on a patient, there's different way you treat a patient. But you don't say, hey, I'm right or you're wrong in front of a patient and make them feel uncomfortable, right? You try to hash that out in the background saying, hey, I think we should treat this patient this way, and you come to an agreement with them. The same exact way. That's what a marriage is supposed to be. One of my teachers said that marriage is the union of two imperfect people, two people that are not perfect, nowhere near perfect, trying to make something perfect. Right? Marriage is a union when two imperfect people are coming together to form this perfect relationship. It's very hard. It's not going to happen. There will be ups and downs, but the goal is to have a relationship of love and understanding. That, it's not all about me. It's not all about you. It's about us and how we can make this home a better place. And again, the most perfect example is the life of the Prophet ﷺ. If you look at his relationship with Khadija, right? So many principles we find, but the greatest example of how beautiful the marriage was when he first got his wahi. Right? That was a very traumatic moment for him. Having someone that, an angel that spreads his wings, covers the entire earth, and he's telling him to read, he has no idea how to read, then he squeezes him so tight that his ribs are, touching each other. He comes down running scared, and where does he go? He didn't run to his best friend's house saying, hey, dude, this is what happened to me, right? He didn't run to his, he didn't run to his, the greatest leader, his uncle, the most powerful person, saying, something happened to me. He ran to his home into the loving arms of his wife. Right? That is the ultimate love story. When you're having a difficult time, right? Once something is hard in your life, where do we go? What do we think about? Do we think I'm going to go to my wife, or I'm going to talk to my husband, or I can't even bring it up to him or her? They're going to just brush me off and say, yeah, go talk to your friends, go talk to your mom, right? Or go talk to your best friend. Is that how it is? Right? During the most difficult time, he found comfort in his wife. Someone that provided comfort, reassurance, peace, and consolation for the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? Not only that, she was his greatest confidant, supported him with all her wealth, provided him with counsel when he needed it, and was the first person that accepted Islam. She bore all of his children. Right? That's why when she passed away, and one of the other wives would say, why do you keep talking about her that she passed away and you still keep remembering her? And he became very upset. He said, she was everything for me. And people want to criticize, oh, he married someone that was younger. When the Prophet was 25 and Khadija was 40 when they got married. Right? And the love story they had was unbelievable. So many things we can talk about just in that story, but we'll cut that short, inshallah, because we're almost out of time. So, and he had this relationship with all the other wives as well, in different ways. When someone asked the Prophet ﷺ, because the Prophet ﷺ had a way of showing love to everyone. So someone felt like, oh, let me just ask him, who do you love the most? When someone asks that, who's your best friend? What are we going to say? Oh, it's Yahya, it's Ibrahim, or it's Fatima. He said, who do you love? When someone asks, whom do you love the most? He said, my wife Aisha. So they're like, oh man, okay. Then they're like, okay, who's your boy? So he said, after the women, her father. But he wasn't shy. Like for us to be like, I can't say my wife. My wife's not my best friend. It's not man enough, I'd be like, I can't tell these guys, oh, hey, who's your best friend? You have those password things on there, what's your best friend's last name or whatever? What do we write down? Do we ever think about writing our wife's name? Oh, because, but this is what the marriage is supposed to be. We're supposed to be best friends. And best friends fight. When you have friends, you have disagreements with them, but you don't break that friendship off. Yeah, you may need to go cool down, and we'll learn about how to address those issues when they happen in a marriage. What happens when you get angry with each other? How do you address that situation? But this, again, the most beautiful love stories, not the stuff on TV that's all fake and made up, right? How you're supposed. These are the love stories that how does the Prophet ﷺ interact with his wives, right? What happened when he had a disagreement with them? How do they resolve that? How was he at home? That's why he's the best of character and the best of example, right? And just look at when he was passing away. When he was passing away, where was he? He was in the lap of his beloved wife, Aisha. Right? And then she was doing miswak. She was using miswak on him. So these are the real love stories and what marriages should look like, right? When I'm not feeling well, right, is my husband or wife the one that provides the greatest comfort for me? Or they come and tell us, say, you know what, go take some Tylenol and go lay down. And we brush them off because I have too many things to do, right? And we go about our own lives. And it's not just for the wife. When our wife is sick, do we actually try to make an effort and make some soup maybe, or learn how to make some soup, or just, let me just look at Panera and have it delivered to the house. Here, I got you some minestrone, right? Yeah, you can do that. But true love is when you actually go out of your way to take care of the other person, right? That's what shows. And the Prophet has so many different examples. When he, one of the examples was that he drank from a cup or a bowl, and then he gave it to his wife, and she could drink from the other side, but he turned it towards her, so she can drink from the same spot that he drank. Right? That's love. Right? That's very romantic. We have different aspects of what we consider romance, but they had that in them too. So this is not just for a husband or a wife's example, but this is something that we need to do. When our wife gets sick, what do? We call our mother. I need some help at home. I don't think our wives want to see their mother-in-law when they're sick. They don't want to see them when they're healthy. You want to bring them when they're sick, when they're already upset with things. That's not. They want us, right? Maybe we don't have those muscular arms they want to run to, but we can still have some comfort and peace for them, right? So as husband, we should also have, we provide comfort and security and peace for them also, right? And we support them. And the wives are also a source of comfort, contentment, rejuvenation for the husband. And although these descriptions sound similar, but due to the nature of the gender, they're expressed differently. Right? They're expressed very differently, and that's something we have to understand. And that's something that's being drilled into the Western world. And what the media says is that everything has to be equal. That men and women are equal, and we have to understand that yes, men and women are equal in that they both have an equal opportunity to do good deeds and get close to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, right? And attaining Jannah. Both men and women are created equal in that sense, but women and men are inherently different. We have different organs, right? We have different emotions. Our brain works a little bit different. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us as pairs, right? Pairs are complementary. They fit, when you cut something in half, you can put it together again because they fit each other, right? That's how, not identical, right? I don't want my wife to be gruff and tough like I am. I want some calm and peace and comfort when I come home, right? And a woman doesn't want another person that's emotional all the time. They want someone to comfort them and kind of go look above that. So a husband and wife are equal in the sense that yes, both can cook. they can both clean, right? They can share in those tasks equally. But some things one can do and the other cannot, like bearing children. We can't, physiologically, we cannot, who knows what's going to happen in the next 10, 15 years, but as of right now, men cannot bear children. So we are created a little bit differently. Anyway, the point is that the husband and the wife relationship is complementary to one another. And we talked about, in the first session, that it's not about what right a husband has over his wife or what right a wife has over her husband, right? If we start going down that path saying, you know what, this is my right, then our marriage is doomed. Because now we're looking for the bare minimum, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us, our wives, from, and us from each other, right? In another place, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, هُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَكُم مِّن نَفْسٍ وَاحِدَةٍ وَجَعَلَ مِنْهَا زَوْجَهَا لِيَسْكُنَ إِلَيْهَا. Right? He is the one that created you from a single soul. And from him created his wife, so that why? لِيَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. Find comfort in her. Right? Back to the same word we've been talking about, right? Second. So in another aspect of what marriage is supposed to be, is also mentioned in the same ayah we recited in the Quran in the beginning, right? وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. Right? Mawadda and rahmah. Husband and wife are supposed to have compassion and mercy. In another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives another description of what marriage should be, how a husband and wife are supposed to be. هُنَّ لِبَاسٌ لَكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ لِبَاسٌ لَهُنَّ. Right? And this is a very beautiful, deep, and very comprehensive descriptor of how a husband and wife are supposed to be with each other. Why? Because if you look at clothes, what are clothes? Why do we wear clothes? We cover our defects with it, right? We cover our aura with it, our private parts, right? Something that we don't want people to see. We do it because we want to look nice and honorable, right? And we do to protect ourselves from the weather, or even injuries. And these are some of the basic reasons why. We can go on to a whole separate discussion about why else we wear clothing. But if we look at a husband and wife, a wife is supposed to protect or conceal the defects of a husband. Not go around and tell her friends what his shortcomings are. He never does the dishes. He never helps out with the kids. Right? The same thing with the husband. He's not supposed to go around tell his boys, she doesn't cook as good as my mom. Right? Or she just sleeps in all the time. Right? That's not what a libas. No, they cover all these different things, right? They should be husband and wife should protect each other, whether it's physical support, whether it's mental support, whether it's moral support, however it is, right? Working together. A husband can't just buy a house and provide a place of residence and be verbally abusive and say, you know what, at least I gave you a house to live in. Right? That's not what a marriage is supposed to be. And the underlying premise of all this is that there needs to be love. Right? If we don't have love, then we won't care about doing anything more than these basic rights and responsibilities. For example, right, for those of us that work, if we don't like going to work, or if we don't like our work, what's our attitude? I gotta be in by 9 and clock out at 5. And what's the minimum task on my list to do today so that I don't get fired? So you show up at 8:59 if you're lucky, but usually 9, it happens to be 9:01 sometimes, because you have a 5-minute window you can swipe in, and out by 5. Because you don't want to be there. You have no desire to. You're just doing it because you need a paycheck and you don't want to get fired. Whereas if someone that loves their job, really likes what they're doing, they'll go there early, help open up, take care of whatever needs to be taken care of. They stay late, right? And they want to come back the next day and do it. The difference is that they love, and that's why one of the core aspects of a marriage is that of love, right? And then there's a whole different discussion about love marriages, people who fall in love before they get married and then they get married, or people that are somewhat relatively unknown to each other, know very little, and they get married and they develop that relationship. And we can talk all those discussions later. But in order to have a blissful, or the title of this episode is marital harmony, there has to be love. Right? Without love, you cannot develop a marriage. Right? Marital harmony, again, like we talked about, it doesn't mean that it's always roses and beds of roses, no fights ever, we live happily ever after. Yes, happily ever after comes also with a little bit of, a fight here and there. Otherwise, we wouldn't appreciate it. Right? You won't appreciate the good part of it if you don't go through the bad. Sometimes after a fight, you come out stronger. Sometimes after an argument, when you talk through it and understand the other viewpoint, you feel like, it's my fault. I'm at fault. But that's what a marriage is supposed to be. right? To have this compassion and mercy. And this marriage is supposed to provide us with that peace, tranquility, and safety and comfort. And again, it goes hand in hand, like we said, with a home that what it's supposed to provide. So, inshallah, we'll wrap up with that. I'll finish up with one thing, that I'm using this book called Healthy Muslim Marriage by Mufti Abdul Rahman. It's a very, very good book. If you want to buy it and read it, please go ahead and do it. People that are looking to get married, it's a very good book to read beforehand, because it actually talks about, how to pick a spouse and so many different aspects of it. It's a comprehensive marriage book, which is really, really nice. And one of the things that Mufti Abdul Rahman says in there is that marriage is never supposed to get old. We think that, every time someone gets married, we think about when we first got married, how the honeymoon period, how everyone's so happy, we're always going out, doing X, Y, and Z. And then, we kind of lose that fizzle as we get older and older, where, we start relaxing and letting our gut come out. And, we don't need to look good underneath the shirt anymore. We don't need to smell good anymore. We kind of start relaxing. He said, no. He said, marriage is never supposed to get old. And he narrates a story, interaction that he had with an elderly person in itikaf. And he said that this older person was in itikaf and his son had come. So he asked his son, how's your mother doing? Just inquiring how's she doing. Is she okay at home? And Mufti Abdul Rahman said that, I was joking with him saying, what are you doing? You're in itikaf. You still care about, you're so old. Why do you still care about your wife? And that older scholar, he kind of touched him on his thigh and said, for you guys, for you young people, it's always about touch. But when you get older, you don't need to have any intimacy. You don't need to touch. Even when you're far apart, you have that love and affection. It's a different kind of love that's there. Right? People think automatically when people think of love, they think of intimacy and being close that way. But he's saying it's not that. When you have a good marriage, it never gets old. Right? You're always there for us. And as you get older, when you're more in need of each other, that's when your relationship gets stronger. Right? And so that's what our goal should be, that even though we're maybe 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, it should not get old, and we need to find ways to make it new. And again, those will all be tips, inshallah. It's going to be very long, a lot of episodes on this particular topic itself, because I think it's very, very important. And this is the central core of how to make a smart home. So we'll spend a lot of time in it and discuss different aspects of it. Again, if you want to, I'm trying to just take the most salient points and present it so that we'll get a taste and idea of it. This is by no means supposed to be a relationship lecture where you're supposed to listen to this and become perfect husband and wife. Nothing like that at all. It's just to pique our interest a little bit and just discuss things that may be applicable to at least myself and people around me, and how we can make ourselves better, inshallah. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to have mawadda and rahmah in our marriages, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us peace, tranquility, safety, love, and comfort in our spouses and our homes. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to perfect our character so we can improve our marriage. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.